I'm here just to steer the ship. I am an author. You are an author. We're here to celebrate all the signs, which I'm so excited to talk about tonight.
Thank you.
And I had kind of initiated in my notes, like the idea of like, we've got to swap star signs, but then I found yours in your newsletter.
Yes. And also in the character in the book.
I was like, okay, so show of hands, because I don't want to spoil anything. Has anyone had a chance to read the book all the way through? Okay, we've got a couple. Okay.
Some people are showing their...
So I will try to keep that in mind as we have our conversation, but I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the main character, Leah is how I'm pronouncing it in my head. Okay. And she has your star sign. So why don't you share that with us?
Which is Leo. And there is nothing more Leo than to give your main character your exact star sign. So I felt like I was going to lean in. A little bit of embracing astrology and what I've learned about it is leaning into it. And that means leaning into my Leo-ness. So I did that on this. Do you feel like I'm kind of curious as a show of hands, who here knows their sign? Okay, that's most people.
And then, but then there's like the sun sign, which is the one we're born under.
Okay. So out of curiosity, who knows their sun, moon, rising? All three. Okay.
It's LA, so I feel like
this is and the West Side.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the West Side. Okay, sorry, I cut you off. I was curious about that.
I love knowing that too. You are Leo sun, Leo moon, Cancer rising.
No, Leo sun, Leo rising, Cancer moon.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a big difference.
There really is. And I am a Cancer sun, Aquarius moon, Aquarius rising.
Whoa. So we both have the doubles.
Yeah.
My mother is a Cancer sun.
It's a lot.
I mean,
so is
I'm a Cancer moon.
Yeah.
So it's very.
So we'll probably cry by the end of this conversation.
If you were all lucky.
And out of curiosity too, what is your birthday?
My birthday is the same as the characters in the book. It's August 7th.
Okay. Do you have any people with the birthday August 7th?
Any star twins of mine here in this room?
Because this will factor into our conversation and the book as you read this idea of star twins.
Yeah. So I'm an early Leo, which for anyone who knows makes me a first house Leo. We can really get into it. We'll talk after.
I love this. So oftentimes these author conversations start with like the moderator saying like, what's your book about? And I personally don't enjoy that. So what I have done is I have found a synopsis from a review on Goodreads, which was a 5-star review. So I thought I would read that just to give everybody, just so we're all starting on the same page.
Yeah. And if you're still considering purchasing, perhaps this will help.
That's right. This will start, and keep in mind, 5 stars. All right, this person wrote, this is one of the most fascinating books about a character's journey to find herself that I've ever read. Leah is a successful doctor, seemingly on the path that's meant for her until 2 things happen, a sudden illness and a reading from an astrologer. Those 2 events make her question much about her life, past, present, and future, and she sets off on a journey to find the answers she needs. Leah is an intriguing character. Her internal conflict and the people and places she encounters at war with everything she thought she believed and wanted. I was riveted by her story, never knowing which way she'd turn when faced with hard choices she had to make.
They tell the authors not to go to Goodreads themselves as a form of self-protection.
Yeah.
So this is the first Goodreads review of my own book that I've ever heard.
That is very good. I've never looked at Goodreads of my own.
You
work.
can't.
No.
You can't. Oh, but that was such a delight. Okay, thank you so much.
Come on in. Come on in. So I feel like that gives us all kind of a good sense of what the book is about. You can also read the synopsis on the back. Obviously, I want to start with digging into your mind about like the first spark of an idea for this book. Because I caught some of it in some of your writing in your newsletter.
Yeah.
Was it an aha moment, as Oprah likes to say, or was it something that you'd kind of been playing with or even experiencing?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. And my character goes on a search for her star twins, which she defines as people with her exact same astrological chart. And we can get into the specifics of that. But I did that. I did that search at a kind of challenging time in my life. I was probably 38. So I was approaching my 40th birthday. And I was really questioning like where I was in my career as a writer and trying to figure out if I was on the right path. And I live far from my family in New Jersey. I was questioning all sorts of things that you do as a woman who's approaching a big milestone birthday. And it now seems so crazy that my thought was, Well, the solution is so clearly to go searching for everyone with my same exact astrology, because they'll no doubt have the answers. Which is just like,
That seems
at the time, it was
delightful.
so exciting to me. Like, I think my brain needed a project, which is a little bit of a window into my brain. I was so excited about this idea of having something to busy me.
Yeah.
And so, as some of you may remember, I feel like I screamed this across the internet for several months, but I went looking for these twins. I made an ad campaign to do so. I got census data. It got really involved. And ultimately, I connected with 8 twins. And I met these people.
Wild. Wow.
And so at that time, I was kind of thinking that maybe this would be like a memoir project. I was definitely thinking it would be some kind of writing project.
Yeah.
But the more I talked to the individuals, it was too rich to be just me. And I have kind of lived a lot of the path of my astrology, or as dictated by my astrology. I haven't always felt great about that, but it has kind of come naturally to me.
Mhm.
Like, my intuition always ends up connecting with what my astrology says it should be, which should be kind of like affirming. I'm always kind of like, oh, but are we sure? A lot of the star twins did not have a very natural path to that intuition. And so that was what made me more curious. So I was really fortunate with the sale of the heirloom to have a second book option.
So you had this.
So I had this like in the back of my head, and I was pitching other ideas that were fine. And I had this idea, and I think I was holding on to it thinking like, oh, this is a very scary second book to write and to have to write quickly. I knew the research it would take, but then I made the mistake, or kind of like fell through the door of telling my editor about it. And then
Such a good hook.
I know,
Yeah,
I know. And then there was kind of that, it was so clearly the thing I was the most passionate about. So, it'd be so weird if like now I write them, like, if now it becomes this nonfiction project, but I think there was much more to say than I could say with my own lived experience. And I needed to fictionalize that to kind of get all of that out.
So interesting, because I've been talking to other authors, and there's so much bits and pieces of ourselves in the fiction that we do, and it's not autobiographical. It's just almost it's just woven in the most organic way, which it kind of sounds like this is.
Yeah, and this was really in my first book, the main characters were much more autobiographical and drawn from people close to me. And in this book, the secondary characters very, very much were so. And the primary characters, there's a big relationship with the father and the mother in this book, which don't mirror mine at all. So it was a really interesting challenge to kind of then flip, taking what was close to me and changing it. But there's a lot of I think we call it autofiction, right? I don't know.
I don't know. I bet,
there's
that
a lot of it in this book. There's a lot of places, a lot of experiences. And I'll say, when I was struggling the hardest with this book, when I went to a thing I had actually experienced, in particular, the scene where the character has this meditation experience. And it wasn't in the original draft. And ultimately, we needed something a little bit more to show, like, I was very insistent when you're writing transformational characters, but how? People will be like, meditate, but I need more. I need real specifics about how to change my life. And so I wanted to show what that meditation looked like. And the meditation scene is almost exactly a meditation experience that I had. And I just figured, like, it helped me.
Why not?
Yeah.
I honestly, when I finished the book, I was like, I really should meditate.
See?
I know. I truly had that thought.
working.
My therapist says it to me quite often.
Yeah, they all do.
I
like, well, then what is this for, right?
So how did you, like, when you set out to figure out, like, learn about star twins? Because I'm into astrology, and I had never heard that term.
Yeah.
Was there something you had read, or just a story that you'd heard that piqued your interest, or did you Google like people with the same?
No, I spoke to several astronomers.
Okay. Oh, not astrologers.
No, because I was trying to figure out the precision of it. So astrologers were kind of aware that, there could be some interesting similarity with people with the same chart, but they couldn't tell me exactly how to determine what the stats would be or the qualifications would be to figure out those people. So I found this incredible astronomer who wrote this really compelling book called A Scheme of Heaven. His name is Alexander Boxer.
Oh, wow.
And not only did he kind of define it for me, but then he helped me build, in the book, my character develops like essentially a survey to qualify her star twins and figure out how close they are in alignment to their chart. And Dr. Boxer helped me create that survey.
Wow.
Yeah. So I worked with an astrologer to come up with, like, what are the qualities of the sign? And then I worked with Dr. Boxer to turn them into survey questions and kind of imagine that for the book.
So it's interesting that there's so much of you in this book. So Leah, our main character, is a skeptic. She works in STEM. She's an OBGYN. She goes into the first astrology reading like almost beyond skeptical.
Yeah.
And really challenges, and throughout the whole story is kind of like butting heads with all these different modalities, shall we say.
Yeah.
Is that also, were you also a skeptic?
No. I am a believer when things are good.
I mean,
and I think this is to say, and I don't know if everyone feels this way because that's how they connected their astrology. I like my astrology. And so I kind of, the things that it tells me about myself, I'm kind of into, and that excites me. And so that's obviously makes me an apt audience to believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because the things that I've been skeptical about my astrology, we talked about having this Cancer moon, which means I need to like be alone all the time and take tons of naps. And I know that sounds delicious and delightful, but I wasn't raised in a napping culture. Like if you're not with the whole family, like what are you doing?
Yeah, I know.
Where are you? So yes, this is to say that those things I would say, well, that I don't feel like that and I don't like that. So maybe astrology isn't real. So there were skeptical pieces of me and not, but I'm inclined to be a believer. And I thought it would be much more interesting to feel into what it would be like to be a skeptic and how in the world am I going to convince this character and then convince all of you that I have convinced the character. So it felt more interesting to write a skeptic, even though it was hard not being a true skeptic.
I thought it was interesting too, because obviously astrology is at the heart of the book, but I felt like what the character got out of it in the end was not like, I believe in astrology, but more like, I believe in myself.
Yeah. And that was so important for me. My first book was about superstition and this huge superstition around this ring. And I was like, I cannot write a book that sets out to say that this superstition is real. That's dangerous, right? For readers. And I felt the same way about this. I think that there are pieces of the puzzle of what astrology has offered me that have much more been about noticing things, questioning myself, having like a mirror with a lot of detail to it that does that. And I didn't want Leah to change so much that she became an unrecognizable character, of course. But I also, it's not for me to prove whether astrology is real or not, right? I think that's something that kind of exists in a different way, and it's not exactly where I leave her off.
The idea of a character arc too, for her, I just felt like this character settles into who she is.
Yeah.
Like that's the journey, is that kind of like coming home into yourself.
And I think it's a really, for her, and I think for me, even the pieces of me, I have been really supported in the things that have been intuitive to me. So I was kind of raised to follow my astrology, if you will, because the things I was inclined to do, no one ever said, don't be an artist, don't be a writer. They kind of said, don't move to LA. That's a longer story. Some people here know it, but even that, So I, those pieces of the puzzle I can't relate to, but I really can relate to those pieces of us. There's like a little bit of a theme in the book about almost like, but what do you really want? Right. And desire and tapping into that. And a big theme of how are you going to feel when that disappoints people? And how is that going to land with you? And that is still very, very hard for me.
I mean, generationally too, I feel like I'm technically Gen X.
Yeah.
I'm real cuspy.
Yeah.
But like that I understand the millennial, and that feels very specific to that generation of kind of wanting to please and wanting to follow this path. And then what if that's not actually what I want to do?
And even now I can like think through some of the scenes without giving them away, that like it's hard. It's really hard for me to even think them now because of how hard it was for me to let my character say what she needed to say to some of especially the parents. And, I am one of 4 girls and I'm the oldest. And I had this tricky decision to make. My poor sisters are kind of like, are you ever going to write any of us into books? Because most of my characters end up being only children.
Right.
This character is an only child. And I think there's something really even harder about disappointing a parent if you are the only child. Like I can't even think it.
Yeah, I can't even.
My sisters are back home taking care of things while I'm here, and I play my part. But I do think it is heart-wrenching to think about what the decision that my character makes and the expectations on her that are only from a place of love, but they are heavy expectations.
Okay, let's talk about the parents.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like, wow. These like the relationships that Leah has with her mom and her dad are so different.
Yeah.
But they go through such transformation throughout the book, and they're both extremely intense in very different ways.
Yeah.
And I just think exploring that like parent-child dynamic, especially because this character works with her father, is carrying on a family business that's very important. Writing also from the point of view of an older, like you were also writing from the point of view of these parents.
Yeah. I'm kind of like 60 though in my heart.
Okay.
So I feel like
So you related more to the parents.
Sometimes.
I mean, that's fair.
Sometimes I was so mad at Leah and I was really thinking of her from the perspective of the parents. So I don't know, that may be just like birth order, being an oldest, but it was really hard also because, I want anything I write to be like yummy and entertaining and a fun journey and light on the page and humorous. And yet I felt like in order to give this book the heart and the depth that it needed, I had to kind of go there with the parents.
Yeah.
And I'll say it, I didn't do it in the first draft. And that's why it had to get thrown out. It just wasn't, I think I was really afraid, especially as you'll find when you read about the position that I put the mom in.
I was so interested in this.
It was really hard for me. Yeah. And I had to talk to, my mom is nothing like the mom in this book. And so I had to talk to people and find some people that had somewhat similar experiences just to kind of understand the dynamic. And I also had to talk to some women that are mothers who made choices similar-ish to the choice that the mother in this book made.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a connection to it, but I wanted it to really feel real.
It felt very real. And it it was, didn't stress me out, but I felt the tension.
Oh, it stressed me out.
Okay.
I'm still stressed out. And the other thing that's kind of hard about this book takes place over the course of 3 months or something like that. So it's also really hard to resolve a relationship between, a long-standing conflict between a parent and a child in a way that makes everybody comfortable and confident in the end that this is going to be okay, but doesn't fast forward things to an unrealistic speed. I think that was really a hard thing about the end.
Tricky as a writer.
Where do we leave the father? Where do we leave the mother so that we know that we have hope? We care more about Leah. This is her journey, but these relationships have been somewhat resolved, but you can't imagine that they've fast forwarded through years of therapy that they've never had. And whatever that would be. So that was really hard. I look forward to your feedback.
Well, I felt like they were very flawed in a very realistic way. Neither of the parents were total villains and neither were total saints, even though the perception of Leah's perception of them changes throughout the story.
Yeah.
But capturing an adult relationship to an adult parent is its own thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's hard.
Yes.
I also was trying to kind of capture this idea that my character has thought her whole life, and with affection for this thought, that she is her father's daughter and that is who she wants to be. And that's her guidepost. And that is going to get her through life safe and happy.
And rejects everything her mother kind of had.
And then I really was trying to say with her journey that this character may be her mother's daughter. And that was such a, even now it's hard to think of the, what it would take to kind of, having not gone through what this character did, to be able to see that.
Well, there's also, I think, a very human experience of one day realizing how similar you are to your parents in both wonderful ways and also very negative ways.
Yeah. And then there has to be forgiveness there.
Yes.
I mean, in this book especially, there has to be there doesn't have to be, but I hope that I offer a chance for forgiveness on the part of the character to understand, I think especially when it comes to the background of the parents and the ages that they were when Leah came into their lives, and oh, my mother was a young woman, and so
I know you think about that now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You focus so much with this character of Leah, and there are characters that come into her world who kind of help guide her to these realizations. But there's to me, there was a very clear message of kind of self-empowerment and learning to love and embrace your authentic self and voice. Mm-hmm. As you are sitting there over whatever keyboard you're
Mhm.
using. Are you going into this draft like, here are the things that I want people to take away? Or does that kind of reveal itself to you? And I heard you mention you had to throw out a draft of this book.
Yeah.
I've been there with the second book is often really rough. We'll touch on this.
Yeah.
So maybe did it come out at a certain point? Like how does that work for you as the writer?
A little bit of both. I feel like I set out with this idea of these are the things I want to communicate. It's always that you set out to communicate too much, I think ends up being my problem. So it's kind of like, well, I want to make sure people get this and then they get this. And I want to make sure they feel this. And it's sometimes very hard for me to distill. And I have these like wild journal entries from the writing process where it's like at the top of the page, what is this book about? What is the point of this book?
What is the point?
What
Why
is
am I
this book
doing
saying?
this? Yeah.
If this book is saying one thing, what is it saying? Because you do kind of at the end of the day, things can get really muddy when that message isn't clear. And I found with this book, I had so much heart for Leah and there was so much I wanted her to, so many places I kind of wanted her to arrive at, but you really need to focus that. And so that the character kind of like tells me along the way. And it tends to be that like, and it's so wild. Like you must have the same experience. Like, where do these things come from? But like
No idea. Yeah.
a line of dialogue will come, a character will say something that will just come to me and I'll be like, oh, that's it. That's it. That's the thing that comment, that thing, that realization is the thing that has been like, that's the kind of tie that binds it. And I haven't been able to find it ahead of time. And I think that's why first drafts are so hard. I think that's why outlines are so hard. You write this like beautiful outline. Every scene works. And then the whole thing is garbage.
Yeah, falls
and
apart
you
immediately.
can't figure out why it's like not working on the page. So it's definitely a process of finding it. And I think it's a scary process of having to say like, I know I have something to say here and I'm going to figure it out. Going to come to me.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But what's also like miraculous about the whole thing is that it happens.
Yeah.
You're just like, what? You did it.
Yeah. It is really miraculous. And I think there's a piece of the puzzle of kind of like this second book process of everything I thought was the way to write a book with the first book turned out not to be the way to write a book the second time. And so figuring that out and trusting it was a really hard piece of this.
And you did this very fast, which I think is in any creative or anything you're building to do it very quickly under a pressure of a deadline.
Yeah.
Whilst you had a book coming out into the world.
Yeah.
That is a lot to have in the mix.
Yeah, too much. But you know what's kind of funny about it is that my astrology helped me, which is like such a silly thing. But I was doing all this astrology research. I kind of like backed myself into this corner where I was writing about myself because I had given the character my exact same astrology. But then the answers to how to take care of myself and find myself creatively and work through the process were the answers I was researching for the character. So I was like, I have to live this book and write this book. It was very confusing, but it was kind of a funny thing because the speed meant I had to do kind of whatever it took and let go of those, like, I keep using this as an example, but like, I can't tell you how many times I didn't walk the dog and my husband did it or a neighbor did it or like, but that's seems like a small thing, but in my heart, it was like the biggest thing is how could I can't believe I have to surrender to this thing and not take care of the things that make me, a good girl.
Yeah. So as the writer of this book, who has a character that is kind of rooted in so many similarities, do you feel like you had a similar transformative journey as this character did in the writing process? Is this am I too cerebral here? Is this too?
No, I mean, you could never be too cerebral.
Okay.
As a Cancer. I think, yes, I think I'll never write a book the same if I'm so lucky to write a book again. And I think that's because of what this was like. And I actually do think if it hadn't had to happen so fast, like I was, of course, like groaning about, we made the decision together. This wasn't forced upon me. I decided to release year after year because it felt like a great way to kind of launch. And that was really exciting. I don't know that I would have learned as much if I had had more time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of now hard to, what's done is done. Then we have at least 1 5-star review to say it worked out.
That's right. Yeah. Well, 2 after I add mine. I can confirm there were like many more.
Oh, that's so
don't look, but
that's
just know.
Yeah,
the stars were starring.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, let me make sure I know where I'm in my questions. Okay, yes, we need to just touch on the romance.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a second chance.
Yeah.
Romance. I'm a real sucker for childhood friends.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a
Yeah.
spoiler, but you find out real fast.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love how you write romance because it's a part of the story. It's not the whole thing, but it's another way that we see this character kind of give into the next phase of her life.
It's the first note I get though, which is let's make sure that we couldn't remove this man from the story and it would work just as well.
That's fair.
What a reveal. It's hard for me because I'm so insistent on this being a woman's journey to find love with herself, right? And yet I really wanted a character that had loved her. You know, there's this philosophy in astrology and probably in therapy and probably in life that we really know who we are before 5, 6, whatever.
Yeah, this kind of made me weepy actually as I was reading it.
Yeah, this idea and that, you know, of course, life and expectation, I think, especially as a millennial girl and all these things. And so I thought it would be really charming to have a little boy character that had known her and saw her and was sure of her and felt that love for her. And then for him to come back and see her as she is now and kind of be surprised with how she turned out and to kind of be a piece of the puzzle of her being able to see herself. And the whole first draft that is in the garbage somewhere, this guy was called Benny. I was like, that's cute, Benny. I like it. And it was really hard to find him on the page and it wasn't working and I couldn't figure out what he would sound like or look like. And there are 2, one boy, one man in my life who really saw me. A person when I was really little who so sweetly, like I was such a hand-raising, brown-nosing kid. And this little boy liked me no matter what. And then a person in my 20s and they were both named David. And so I changed the character name in the draft, just thinking like, okay, this will help me. I'll be able to find this guy. And then I thought, what an honor. I'm leaving it. Yeah. So these Davids are real Davids. They're real people who really were. And I'm not in touch with either of them.
I was gonna say, just like drop this in
nothing would
the mail
delight
with no
me
letter.
more than if they found their way to this book.
Oh my God, would that not be the most?
It would be so cool.
Ask for luck.
And then I'd write a book about that.
Yes, you would. I mean, that's.
I'm happily married.
Yeah, and the romance is so fun. Like
I know it would be fiction.
It would. See,
Yeah.
Truth in fiction. Okay, I want to just. How are we doing on time, Tessa? Okay, great. Okay, we've got this. Okay, I just want to formally invite myself to come with you on your travels.
Yes, great idea. People will think we're sisters,
right? Okay, amazing. Because the heirloom, we're traveling all over the place.
Yeah.
And then I sat down to read this book, and I was like, here we
go again.
Thank God. I wanted to go. I want to go with you everywhere.
Yeah.
How much of these places are you pulling from personal moments that you've walked down a street in Venice and been like, oh my God?
So far, I've been lucky enough with Heirloom and with this book to have had enough travels to pull from places I've been.
as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And there's a scene in the book that is so special to me because I had this really beautiful kind of transformative experience seeing the whirling dervishes, which are, in Istanbul. And so it's almost directly from my memory. For this book, I did go to Venice, which features prominently on the cover and in the story. And I went to Venice because I was taking myself there as a 40th birthday trip. Some of you may remember that everything went wrong. As you can see from my leg, there's a large scar to prove it. A different story for a different book. But I went to Venice because there was a period of time when this book was going to contain a storyline about astrocartography.
Oh my goodness.
Now we're getting too deep and that's why it's not in the book. But wouldn't you believe it was in that first draft? Astrocartography is like, the map of the stars and then the map of the world and everything works out. And Venice was a lit up city for my chart. And so I was going to Italy already for this birthday trip. And I thought I'll go to Venice and I'll do a bunch of research. And I had all these destinations that were going to be in the book. And then this is the thing about travel. And I think this is why I want it to be in all the books. Everything changed. I met random people. I fell into situations. I stumbled upon things that were what really was interesting and needed to be in the book. And so I think that's kind of why I like to write travel, because it's a delicious part of writing, and writing is so hard that if anything can be very fun, you have to just do as much of that as possible. And I also think that the biggest teaching moments of my life have been because I was way outside my, my bounds.
And solo, I think that's so significant.
Yeah. And that is a newer thing for me. It came with injury, but I do think it's really transformational. It was something I wanted this character to do. wouldn't you believe in the first draft, she wasn't alone on her travels. And you can see why that had to go. But yeah, I thought it was really important that she be alone. And she does meet people along the way. But, you know, a little bit of what I'm trying to show in this book is this idea of when we are alone, the expectations of other people. And if we're people that kind of always ladder up to those expectations, then what do you really want to do with this day? And so her being alone, I felt was kind of, she had to be alone.
And it's almost terrifying because sometimes you're faced with that question as she is, and she literally just doesn't.
Yeah. And I think that's so relatable.
Yeah,
you know, we all think that having a complete day to ourselves is so incredible. And I think it can be, for me, it can be very scary. It's like, well, what's the wisest thing? And what should I eat? And what does Instagram think I should see? And who should I, you know, be prepared to post and say what the experience was like? I think it can be. And I gave her 2 opportunities to have a complete day to herself with nothing to do. And they're purposefully really different. The way she is in the beginning and kind of the way she is in the end.
Well, let's just tie it up and just ask before we incorporate our friends in front of us. What do you hope people take away from the book? And I know every reader's experience is different. And I think that's what makes reading so magical, honestly. Like, so, that's the whole point. But is there something that you kind of hope there's a piece of this book that kind of everybody gets to carry with them no matter what they
and I think it's a little bit goes to your question of like what was I trying to say with this book? And I think I landed on these 2 things that go together, which is that you have access to yourself. You have access to the truth of yourself, scary as it may be to find it. And when you find that self, people will love that. They will love you. And it may be a little messy and tricky and the path may not be easy, but you will be okay, you know? And so I do think that is what, when people close the book, if they do one thing that they've kind of been wanting to do, but haven't been doing because someone might be mad or they're scared, then that would just totally delight me.
I just do want to shout out your new newsletter on Substack because I feel like it ties into all of these things. And I was reading through it and I love, it's called, let me make sure, is it just called Brave?
It's called Bravery.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And Substack for readers and writers has just become this awesome place. I was a blogger.
I know, likewise.
I'm aging myself. It just feels like returning to that form of writing.
It's nice, right?
You know, and these take so long. You know, you're at it alone. You're not getting feedback. You're not getting comments. You're not reading the Goodreads even when you get the comments.
Don't read them.
So writing Bravery has just been this like weekly way for me to figure out how to say something and then get some quick feedback and connect with people and have really lovely experiences connecting with some people who are here today. But it's, I kind of forgot. I think when writing is a career, I think it's so easy to get marred in what is the project that I'm working on that is my next paycheck? And that's so real because it's the way you survive. But you know, to just be writing freely without that purview has been so fun.
I've loved reading it. I highly recommend it if you're not following.
Thank you.
Well, let's open it up to questions, comments.
We'll take both.
I mean, statements, thoughts on your own astrological experience. Any moments in your life where you've been like, oh my goodness, I'm having this astrological thing come to fruition?
I'm sorry, I have to say one more thing, because I think some people in the room will find this funny. So I was born here. Like the character, as you'll read, I was uprooted. I was moved to the East Coast, which is where my family was, and I was raised there. And then I moved back here when I was 26. And so my 27th birthday was the first one that I celebrated here in Los Angeles. And I shot out of bed on that morning. It was still dark out. And I was like, this is strange. And I looked at the clock and it was the exact time I was born.
And that's eerie. I love these moments.
And I was living 3 blocks from Cedars, which is where I was born. And, you know, you say that to anyone in Los Angeles and they're like, you need to get an astrology reading. And so that is why. That's how this whole thing began.
Oh, really?
I had my first birth chart reading because of that really weird experience. So perhaps if I hadn't moved back here, which was the right thing, Joan, then maybe that never would have happened. So that's my little astrological magic. Okay, open to questions.
That's great. Yeah. Anybody? I know it's hard to be on the spot.
Hi.
What is the definition of an astrological twin in terms of the parameters of the timing
and
all that?
Great question. So your star twin is someone born on your same day. So I'll use me. Has to be August 7th, has to be 1983, has to be between 2 hours plus or minus of your time. So I'm 5:15, so that would be someone born 3:15 a.m. until 7:15 a.m. And because the Earth spins as the day goes, you could find someone like I did in Istanbul, Turkey. So I actually found a star twin who's this Turkish pop singer, this super cool guy called Murat, who lives in Istanbul, because as the day went, the sky was the same above the Earth as it rotated throughout the day. So that's how it's defined.
So location, they don't
That's
all
right.
have to be born at Cedars.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. I mean, it's super special if you can find
my
someone that's
gosh.
exact. I didn't find someone that close. The closest I got was San Diego around, I think she was like 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's pretty close.
It was
though.
close. It was
Yeah.
close. Yeah. And she was oddly nothing like me. So it was really interesting to kind of try to figure that out.
Wow. That's fascinating.
So identical twins are star twins.
Right. Like yours.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you have an identical twin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a fraternal twin.
Right. So you both, this is the star twin section of the
Oh my
audience.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. So that's really interesting.
That is fascinating.
Especially because of what I know about both your twins.
Oh, conversation for after this.
Yeah. See you at the bar.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Yeah.
Jessie, you alluded to a book. Was it an astronomer's? Not an
Oh,
astronomer's
yes.
book?
Yeah.
What was that?
His name
Sorry,
was-
my name, and why would we read? Why would we read it? Why would we? That would be appealing to us.
It was called A Scheme of Heaven, and it was called Astrology, and the Birth of Science. And this guy, who fascinatingly is a total skeptic, doesn't believe in astrology at all, but he's really fascinated by how it pertains to history. So there was a period of history, many hundreds of years, where astronomer and astrologer were the same word.
Yeah.
So to study the stars and watch how they move
Which
and observe what happens.
You teach us in this book.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Not too much. More in the first draft.
Okay. I'll read that later.
The famous first draft, soon to be published. So I found it so interesting because a lot of the history of kind of why astrology exists, but even more so kind of the brilliant people that use the stars and the sun and the moon to try to figure out what the hell was going on down here as it pertained to climate and crops and then moods of kings and emperors. And that's how all of this was developed. I thought it was so interesting. And I liked it even more because he is a skeptic. So it felt like it was written by somebody who was
What
really,
was his name again?
his name was Alexander Boxer. Yeah, I have it. I'll bring it to your house. Okay. Any other questions? So good. Yeah.
What was your favorite thing that you found about a twin?
Mm.
Maybe like a fun experience or like a fun similarity. What was like your favorite thing you discovered?
So I met 8 twins, and out of the 8, 6 of us, I moved here in September of 2010. And there was a significant astrological transit going on for me and my star twins at that time. I didn't know that then. And 6 of the 8 of us that I talked to made big changes in that exact same month. So someone had been accepted to a grad program and she wasn't going to do it. And then like last minute she decided and she started Labor Day weekend. Another guy ended engagement. Another person, it's the weekend she got pregnant. So I thought that was wild.
Wow.
And they weren't all the weekend. A few of them were really close like that, but I thought it was really interesting that there was this like specific period of time. And the changes were so different. It wasn't that any or all of them, 2 of them happened to be writers, but it was the idea that transformation had happened in that exact period of time. That's kind of creepy.
That is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about the cover.
Okay.
Because the cover is stunning.
It's so beautiful, right?
Is it based on an actual photo that you took? And what was the process of coming up with the cover? Because I've been in this room with so many authors who have talked about the struggle, the trauma, the drama.
No, I
the
feel
cover.
so
Huh?
lucky. You know, we had a conversation. It was the same conversation with Heirloom. You know, it's hard to sit in a space that's kind of beach read with some romance and, you know, stray away from putting a man and a woman on the cover. And that was a really tough decision for the publisher and I, but we stuck with it with Heirloom and we did with this. And so we had a conversation between the many locations in the book about what location felt the most like you were going in with the character. And I did have some photos from my own time in Venice that kind of looked like this. And this is a classic shot of Venice. I didn't share those. We kind of just talked about it theoretically. And then I was delivered this exact cover.
Oh my
The
gosh.
only difference is, so there you can see there's kind of like these charming stars in here, and then they were reflected down there. And then the original they sent me, the stars were just cute and they were up at the top and in the thing. And I asked for them to be the constellation Leo. Shocking no one.
I love that.
And that was the only, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. She was wearing something absolutely ridiculous in the first version. It was like this little skimpy thing and it had a pattern to it and it felt dated to me. So I changed her outfit, and the stars. But I have been so fortunate. The people that are thinking about these books on my behalf inside Putnam are just nailing it.
I looked at this cover and specifically looked at this person's bag and I was like, that is a great bag.
Wouldn't you know,
Is
Kate,
it your bag?
Not only is it inspired by my bag, but I had this kind of cute round bag, but then I found another one and the publisher's raffling it off. Yeah, I bet I can bump you to the top of the list.
Yeah, but give me like a couple entries.
Yeah, I found it. I thought it'd be such a fun little thing. That's so funny.
Oh, I went
and then
right.
she had this like silly little bag no one would ever use when they travel.
Oh, that's a great outfit. It's a great travel
We changed
outfit.
it. Classic. Thanks. So important.
Did you have a question, or are you just grabbing your glass? I have a kind of just curiosity question because your dress is tarot.
Yeah.
But is there a connection between astrology and tarot?
An astrologer would tell you that the tarot cards, which are a deck of cards that have representative symbols on them that pertain to things, that the astrology of the moment will determine the pull of the cards, and that's how they relate to each other. So that's kind of the idea of it. But the tarot, while very, very old, was not developed in association with astrology. It's a lot younger than astrology, but that's kind of the relationship. And I think that's why some astrologers use tarot as kind of a way to see more. Now I'm going to confess, despite wearing this dress, I'm a skeptic about tarot. I like to look at it. I think it's really beautiful, but it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that.
Even like a card game.
It's like that's the line
card
for
game.
me.
Yeah, that's okay. We all have it. We all have.
Yeah,
some line.
I know, exactly.
I mean,
no, I think that's, and I also think there's something really interesting about kind of like where that line is for different people, and then like what makes you cross it, right? Like you have an interesting experience, like me, and waking up at that birth time.
Yeah, I've always been a tarot skeptic until I had. Yeah, and I was like, what, how, and what, and it's wild,
right?
But also, it's nice to believe.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said in every single category for the placebo effect.
Yes.
Right? I mean, if this whole book isn't a great case for the power of the placebo effect and just permission, I feel like it's something where, it's for me, that is such a headline word for me of like what I'm looking for and looking to give myself and trying to, have other people give me, when in fact, I think that a little bit of what this character goes through is the knowledge that you're never going to get it.
Yeah.
You're never going to get it externally if it's that deeply, uncertain internally.
Did you do the astrological chart of the book? Because the book came out on May 6th.
Yeah, not yet. I should say. And I'm having some of these lovely events. I'm doing conversation with astrologers. So we'll see if we can get that. But that would make this book a Taurus, which is very good for it.
Yeah, they're very luxurious.
Out there.
Yeah.
Selling.
They love nice things. They love money.
Nice things. Yeah. I think that's good. So
I felt good to me.
We'll
Taurus
see if it's faded.
good.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Well.
Daddy,
This is actually a question for both of you
Mm-hmm.
as authors. Do you have a ritual when you're on draft that helps you get into the space of writing?
It's very dark. It's like,
I can't wait.
Take my Ritalin.
Yeah.
I have raging ADHD. No ritual. I have to like almost trick myself into doing it and into not into regulating a lot of the negative self-talk, because it's such an isolating, you're so lonely. It's such a weird experience because it really is just you and these characters. So I think, oh gosh, that's a great question. I don't, and I have learned, I've written 4 books. Every single one is so different.
Oh no.
Possibly, sorry. Well, but the experience, and I think it's also because of where you are in your life.
Totally.
I just finished a book, and my kids are now 14 and 12. And the first time I wrote a memoir, they were like, 5. Just even those kinds of things are different. What you're doing professionally, what's going on. Maybe you're a caregiver for somebody. So, no, I just think allowing it to be different, even like every day or even within the day. I personally think like prescribing to a writing routine does not work for me, but I'm sure it's wonderful for other people.
Yeah, you hear so much about it. Like I feel like Stephen King like destroyed it for the rest of us because he wakes up every morning, has a cup of black coffee, writes Carrie. But he does. He writes like every morning from 8 to whatever. No, I've never had that. But one thing I found that got me through the speed of having to write this one is, and it kind of did become a little bit of a ritual, is so every night before bed, I would go to my, I keep a notebook, which is like where I'm like brain dumping and all this stuff. And I would try my hardest to at least get the first few thoughts of what the writing was going to be for the next day down on the page. And I think it was good for 2 reasons. I think it helped me sleep. And sleep is like one of the most important rituals. Like your brain just needs to rest. So I could like calm down and think, I know where I'm starting tomorrow. And then the next day I had like a little jump start on the work, and it would be like bullets. I mean, sometimes it would be like a masterful sentence that I would edit away anyway, but it was more that like wrote every night, where am I going tomorrow? It's okay. We're going to be okay. I mean, I feel like a lot of my ritual sounds like yours, which is just like hacks to calm yourself down.
Yeah.
We're fine. This is fine. We have plenty of time. Like all this, like
Calming your nervous
system down. I use a weighted blanket all the time, but I will put it over me when I'm writing. And I think it's just like everything's cool. We're calm. We're grounded. I think I'm gonna. Well, let's work on this. I want to develop a weighted jacket. Like it's a weighted blanket, but it's a jacket. Yeah. Okay. Good. So we have a market.
I like that. Yeah.
Because I just like
embrace.
That's the problem is like I like end up like making a cape and I'm like then it's heavy, so then I can't write. So this is something to be worked out, but that's like another thing. And I do think the whole point is just like everyone stay calm.
I
We're
write
gonna
in
get
like
this done.
I write in a full body. It's almost like a wearable sleeping bag.
Oh, that's good.
I often write in that because I'm in, kind of like that. I did want to add one thing that I think is really important if you're a writer or creative person, which is to not do the thing. Like I think going for the best writing in my brain happens if I'm like on a walk, on a hike, out with friends. I often am like, I've got to be sitting in front of the computer for 8 hours. And truly, I think the times when I'm like having the most kind of creative moments is when I'm not doing that. And that is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's an interesting thing, right? In terms of like giving myself permission, I always feel very guilty when I'm away from the computer. It's like, well, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, it's lucky enough I don't have to go to an office. I like look at this beautiful life that I get to do my dream. I can't also go for a walk. How rude. So a little bit of it is that. It's just giving permission. I have never solved a problem looking at the screen. No. Ever. I just end up taking so many showers during the day. Like many, many showers. Yeah. Great answers. Yeah. One more question here.
Do you get astrology readings? And if you do, how often and where do you get them? How do you find somebody who do those readings?
Yeah. So I got a lot as I was preparing to do the book. So I'm a little like, I know enough as of right now, but I got recommendations from a lot of people. Astrology is a little bit subjective. Different astrologers will read things and interpret things in different ways. So I used 4 different astrologers for the book, just so that I could make sure I was getting a good enough survey. And it kind of one recommended another who recommended another. And I can give you a recommendation to that end. And then there are some pretty great apps. I personally use the Chani Nicholas app, which is a really fun app. And it'll show you kind of what's going on, both with your birth chart, which is like your constant astrology, and then what's kind of going on in the ether. It's fun to look at. So sometimes if I'm having a really shit day, I'll kind of open it and be like, like it doesn't, sometimes there's no answer. It's called Chani app, Chani. And Chani Nicholas is a kind of at this point, I would say renowned,
very famous,
famous astrologer. And I think I like the way she talks about astrology, and it's accessible.
Jessie did an event with my astrologer yesterday.
Without knowing it was her astrologer.
Yes.
And
she's wonderful. She's very, I think she's very hard to get a reading with now. But she has people she's trained on her website that are all wonderful. I know some of them. Her name is Heidi Rose Robbins.
Yeah.
She's here in LA, but would do it virtually. And she's wonderful. Like she's just a great person to follow and has books and lovely resources if you need anybody. She's a delight.
And I'll shout out that I'm doing a workshop tomorrow as part of the event surrounding this book. I'm
Yes.
doing a virtual workshop that is about astrology. And I just thought it would be fun to bring one of the astrologers that I used for the book to offer a workshop about what birth chart astrology is. So it'll be a really fun time and a little online party. So everyone's welcome. I feel like that information is on my website, jessierosen.com, and then / events.
Jessie, can I have one thing?
Yeah.
When you went to these 4 astrologers,
Yeah.
were there solid commonalities?
Yeah.
Or were you shocked? You know, were there glitches that made you doubt?
You know, my astrology is really almost like simple. So, which is hard to explain without getting deep into it, but the positions of my stuff are really clear. And I've always been told that by astrologers. And so when I had the readings, they were wildly similar.
Wow.
And it kind of helped me. It didn't really, I mean, I think you could be skeptical about anything, and that included, but it really helped me with the book because, you know, everything was really, really similar. The one thing, oh my gosh, this is being streamed. The first person I talked to, and I was kind of like talking my life, and she said, "Oh, you're married?"
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's not here. So wonderful. So many of you know him, and I'm so happily married, and it wasn't a difficult decision. But that was hysterical to me. She was very surprised by that. Met with her once.
Wow.
But yeah, that was like the only discrepancy. She's like, you know, this is a lot of like independence and boldness in your chart. So, you know, happy to hear that. But like, she wouldn't let it go.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought it was. And also, like, I should say, like, I don't think that's a super appropriate way to approach a reading, right?
Yeah.
So that also taught me something about like the different ways that astrologers can interact. And that's just, you know, I think they should really be offering and listening and, you know, keeping things appropriate. But I thought that was really funny. You're married. So,
Okay.
so good. Yeah.
I only read a couple of, I downloaded it last night on Kindle. I only read a couple of pages, but I loved seeing you there on the New Jersey Shore in Springsteen. That was cracking up.
Yes. I set this book on the Jersey Shore, which is close to where I grew up. And it felt like we've got some Jersey people here too. So that's like another piece of the puzzle, right? Of just like the little bit of autofiction, a little bit of, I think, honoring, you know, my character makes a choice, but she loves where she's from, you know, and the places are really important. So I thought originally, back to this stupid first draft, it wasn't New Jersey at all.
Oh.
Yeah. And it just didn't, the heart wasn't
Didn't feel
there.
right.
Yeah. And it just kind of feels, I think some people feel like it's too easy maybe to go for the thing. And maybe that's a school of thought, but it just felt so silly. Like imagine me talking to all of you and I'm like, it's in Rhode Island. I don't know. It's a nice place.
I think writing what you know is so lovely.
Yeah. And there's like a real richness. I grew up in a shore town called Manasquan, but I set it in a shore town called the Highlands. And it was like just far enough away. They're really, really similar, but I didn't have to quite, you know, make anyone wonder.
Yeah. But you read as an authentic Jersey girl.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know. Should we wrap it up?
Okay. Jessie will be signing
so
books.
much. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
here.
all.